As Manipur crisis intensifies, where is the state? We return after 4 harrowing days in the troubled, broken land of Manipur. Nothing had prepared me for what we bore witness to. Manipur is today fully transformed into a war zone, bursting with sophisticated rifles, mortars, bombs, and massive daily mobilization of ordinary civilians. Entire villages of both warring communities have been razed to ashes. The state is led by a government that has done nothing to restore peace and ensure justice. The state is absent in its foremost constitutional duty to protect civilians. It is absent from relief. It is absent from relief camps. Instead, the state government is often perceived to be taking sides in what is quickly escalating into a civil war. In Manipur, cut it. The grief, the rage, and above all, the hate on both sides are boundless. The grief in both Methi and Kuki camps almost mirrored each other. In the Imphal Valley, where Kukis were in the minority, crowds set their homes on fire. The same happened to Methi's people, who had lived for generations in the mountain villages of the Kuki tribal people. The unbearable grief and rage of both were that neighbors of the other community, with whom they had lived for generations with peace and goodwill, turned overnight into murderous and pitiless enemies. They had recalled their fearful escapes, often trudging kilometers with children, sick and old people on their backs in the cover of the night. They spoke of pregnant women who gave birth as they escaped, of hungry, frightened babies whose cries they had to stifle. They spoke of people killed, of people who could not survive the arduous journeys. They mourned with his daughters abducted and sexually assaulted, and sons who never returned. But it was their narratives of fury, of congealed hate on both sides, that worried me the most. I was struck first by how, as people grieved inconsolably about the loss of their homes and loved ones, they completely erased from their memories the acknowledgement that people of what was now the other had often suffered almost identical tragedies that their own people had on the hand been felt by the violence. And at the same time, they had also perpetuated these same atrocities. They refused to carry not just the burden of grief for what was done to them, but also culpability and guilt for what they have done to each other. But even more gravely, I found that same narratives of the evil of the other community were articulated. Whether we spoke to community leaders, students, women, or residents of relief camps, the narrative of the Metis people were that the Kuki people were foreigners who had illegally immigrated from Myanmar and would one day outnumber the indigenous Metis people to whom Manipur belongs rightfully. They had benefited from reservations for tribal people to capture jobs and seat in educational institutions. While the Metis are prohibited even from buying land in the mountains, they accuse them of endangering Metis youth by cultivating poppy illegally. They claim that Kuki people are illegally clearing reserved forests for their farm and settlements and threatening the ecology of the region. They claim that Kuki militants roam freely and their violence and gun and drug trafficking thrive under the protection of the Assam Rifles. The Kuki people have an entirely different narrative. They allege that their farmers may cultivate poppies for bare survival, but that profits from the drug trade are mostly harvested by politicians and big business in the Imphal Valley and beyond. They claim to be legal citizens of Manipur and allege that many Metis people want scheduled tribe status to grab their lands and reduce them to a minority in the mountain abodes. They also want to corner the seats in the legislature and educational institutions that are reserved for tribal people. They also allege that a militia of Metis youth is actively supported by the Chief Minister of Manipur, and that it is these militants who ravaged their lands and people. They allege that long years of work by the RSS to convert Meitei nationalism into Hindu nationalism has turned the Meitei people implacably hostile to the Kuki people, also for their Christian faith. And they believe that the Manipur state police and paramilitary force protect the Meitei militants and those who raped and murdered. The two narratives about the same lived reality are so utterly irreconcilable that as long as people on both sides of the conflict are not willing to take few steps down from what they passionately uphold as the truth of the evil other, there is no space for dialogue to even begin. In the midst of all this, the state government has done nothing to establish and support the relief camps for an estimated 20,000 Kuki internal refugees. It is largely the local church, supported by local contribution, that is running more than 100 Kuki relief camps. Children in these have been reduced to eating watery rice with salt. Signs of malnutrition are already unmistakable. No camps have temporary schools. The refusal of the state and central government to establish camps with basic service of safety, sanitation, nutrition, education, and health care is another disgraceful abdication by the state of its fundamental constitutional duties. I searched desperately for signs of hope in Manipur, for peace and healing. I could find this only in stories we heard in the camps of people of the other community who helped save people. These and the acknowledgement of their shared sufferings and indeed their shared belonging alone can create the space even for the start of any dialogue. Thank you.